All right, guys, welcome to the video. Today we're going to talk about the Pincer formation. So this was just announced during an update, right? And it's going to be a formation that gives 10% more smite damage, right? So talk about some thoughts on this, what to expect next. Obviously, we don't know anything else. The big thing, well, we do know what the formation does. We don't know what the special and rare inscriptions do, right? Until that's actually released, a lot of it is just speculation, but this will be my best guess on what it's going to be like, what to expect next, what you should do. All right, so first, let's actually go over the whole idea of balancing the game. Okay, it's very important when we're guessing what the developers are going to put into the game to keep in mind that they, for the integrity of the game, they have to put stuff in, but still maintain an overall balance, right? So obviously, troop types counter each other, but also these systems are designed where nothing gets a little bit too OP, because if something does, essentially it makes the game pretty broken until they fix it, right? So I want to say probably the last time this game was too broken, and they did have to actually nerf it, and it was still really broken, was Attila Takeda, right? Maybe someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but they put something else that was way too imbalanced and they had to nerf eventually. But as far as what I can tell, that's the last time they put something into the game that swayed everything too heavily towards one side. They had to nerf it. Okay, so it's important to note that I compare the Pincer very similar to Delta, because one is giving you 10% smite damage, right, Pincer, and the Delta is giving you 10% combo attack. Whereas if you guys, most people here probably have been following the history of this, right? When we first got armaments, essentially everyone was just pulling for Wedge, okay? Because Wedge at the time, what it still is giving you 5% more skill damage. All the meta commanders at the time was essentially doing skill damage, right? So this was thought to benefit the marches the most, and it was the most universal one. Okay. Then as smite commanders come out, then we started doing Arch for the Luce March, right? But Wedge was still the most universal. Now with Delta, which gives you 10% more combo attack, and then Pincer, which gives you 10% more smite damage, comparatively, the Wedge formation with 5% more skill damage is starting to fall behind, right? Because at least you can make the argument that for Arch, right, the 5% for smite, not only are you getting more white damage, right, with the normal attack damage, but also you're still getting 5% smite on top of it, right? So if you compare Arch to, say, Delta for combo, or Arch to Pincer for smite, right, the trade-off is you lose a little bit on the combo attack with the smite damage, right, but you still gain some, but you also are getting boosts to your white damage, right, especially when you get to the special inscriptions, which is why, like, it didn't, I don't know, it didn't surprise me that, to me, Delta actually was not some, like, completely broken thing like people were making it out to be, because we actually look at Delta, right, and this is like a prediction of what Pincer is going to be like. Thrasher, the first part, all right, 3.5% boosted combo attack damage dealt. That's pretty standard, right? It's worse. That part would just be worse than Arch, right? Because you would rather have 3.5% normal attack damage, which also will give you the boosted combo attack in addition to the white damage. The second part, though, was to me clearly like a rally garrison skill, right? This is something that takes time to ramp up. Yeah, at the earliest, you have to get on your third round of active skills for this to be max, right? Because Arthur's Arthur's expertise has a 50% to trigger, but there's a 10-second cooldown, right? So you can only launch it once in 10 seconds, unless you got lucky and you procced it multiple times in the same turn, which is actually a fairly low chance. Let's just pretend that you're not doing that, or you're not counting on that, right? So you need to launch Arthur's active skill, which is a combo attack. Then you need to launch his expertise, which is a combo attack, right? Then active skill, then expertise, and then whether you launch the active skill again or another expertise on the third round, you're finally going to get this to stack 5 times for the maximum effect, right? You're not going to do that in the open field. This is something that you're actually going to do in rally or garrison, right? So Thrasher to me was clearly a rally garrison skill. Flurry, I think it's Flurry. No. Steel Skin is kind of similar, right? I really like the 2% damage resistance. You just straight up take 2% less damage for everything, right? But then if you look at the second part, it's the same thing. It takes 5 stacks to actually ramp up to the maximum ability for Steel Skin, right? So you have 2 skills here that really benefit the most from prolonged connected fighting, which is essentially Rally Garrison. You have the Butterfly effect, which you talked a lot about, and then Flurry, which gives you an 8% boost to counterattack damage dealt, right? Compared to Arch, which is straight up gives you 8% boost to normal damage dealt, Fearless is just better, because not only are you getting the 8% combo attack boost, and you're also getting the 8% white damage boost, right? So the way this is set up to me, Delta from the get-go seemed to me like it was a Rally Garrison specific formation in the future when they made more combo attack commanders, so you can really take advantage of doing bigger combo attack damage. But then also with Thrasher and Steel Skin, you can ramp up the second part to really maximize the Delta formation. The Butterfly effect, the reason why I don't think it's that good, I already talked about this, is that it's not triggering, it's not making everything do 20% more. It's only when you're doing combo attacks, right? So one, you need a lot more combo attacks, but also if something has like a 5-second cooldown, then the effects of this aren't as great as it seems. If there's no cooldown, it's great, but right now, if you look at every kit, right, from the level 5 stuff to a lot of the instant procs, to even like some of the accessories that people are talking about procking, they have 5-second cooldowns or longer, right? So then this 20% actually loses a lot of its value because of that, right? So what I'm trying to say though is, even though the Butterfly effect, or the Delta formation is giving a 10% combo attack increase, right, which is much higher than say the skill damage, right, the Wedge giving it 5%. There's a lot of skills here to me that actually aren't that good, right? So it actually wasn't too out of balance with Wedge. Okay, and that's very, very important, because if they release something for Pincer, right, it has to still keep Wedge relevant, or they're going to have to buff Wedge, right? Because it makes no sense for them to come out with Pincer, make it very, very OP, way stronger than Wedge and Arch, right? And then essentially kill skill damage, which is still a huge part of the game, and then just throw the balance of the game completely in for loop, right? So if we already have Arch, right, and all of these skills are relevant to the open field, right? Like no matter what you think about destructive, some people, there's a decent amount of people that don't like it. Some people think it's good, right? But all of these Arch special inscriptions are field relevant, right? They don't need to ramp up. They're actually a lot better. Same thing with Wedge. I have a feeling that Pincer, if anything, will be a little bit more like Delta, where there's a niche for it, but it's not necessary for you to just pull for it for open fielding, right? Because they already have something like that for Arch, right? It kind of is weird that they would make something specifically for Smite that's better than Arch for, say, like open field and Rally Garrison, right? Like it's just like there should be a niche, but it shouldn't be like just better overall for everything. We're also like, what's the point of having Arch in the first place, right? So even if it is better, right, it's to be determined what the special and the rare is, right? If it's like a micro optimization, is it worth to just completely give up what you've already built on Arch to switch over? Probably not, right? So like if you already have a full 6-piece Dragon's Breath set, and then now the 222 is actually a little better, is it worth it to dismantle your fully developed like crit Dragon's Breath set just to craft the 222? Probably not, right? Even if it's a little bit better, it's probably not that much better, right? But it is to be determined if it's even better, just because a game balance in mind. So that doesn't mean it can't be. I just have a hard time believing they're going to release a formation specifically for Smite that make it so OP, especially with Wedge still being a thing that a lot of people have, that that like it essentially is so much better than Wedge that they're making one formation type way better than the other. I just don't see it. There's got to be some kind of like limitation or weakness there, kind of like actually what they did with Delta, where I do think in the long term it's going to be best in Rally Garrison, just not with Attila, because Attila does no combo attack, he's all normal attack, which is why Arch is better, right? So that's the first part. All right. So one, I'm not even sure it's going to be better, and if it is, I find it hard to believe that it'll be that much better, just because you already have Wedge around, and you don't want things to get too imbalanced. Right. The second thing is, if Pincer is good and to run open field, that is the best thing. I still wouldn't do it for now, because I don't see a way that Lilith doesn't drop the cost to use these conversion stones, right? So these conversion stones over here, right? I only have one left. Let's actually go to the bundle. So they're expensive, right? I think the $9 one, $9.99, so $10 gives you one, $20 gets you two, $50 gets you three, right? So if you spend $80, you're getting 6 conversion stones. Then the $100 tier gives you 5, so that's $180 for 11 stones, right? And then after that, you can actually buy the $100 tier for 6 more times at 5 stones a pop, right? So if you do that, right, you're essentially spending $780 for 41 stones, and you need 10 stones to convert a special over from one formation to another. Right, $780 is pretty expensive, right? The other alternative to that is that if you do a bunch of achievements in the KVK, you could get 10 stones of KVK, right? Or 4 KVKs, which for most people will take a little, like, more than a year, right? That's a very, very steep price to put on people, especially rally garrison leaders that, you know, want the best of the best, and for them to essentially release a formation that's just better than another formation, and to force people to spend a bunch of money to switch over, right? We've seen how as they released the Awaken system, they dropped more season coins, so you could get more KVK items. They dropped the cost of KVK items just because they didn't want it to be too astronomical to go down that route and to try to get Awaken 5 for KVK items, right? I think as they start releasing formations like this, and then there is an incentive to switch over from one formation to another. Right now, that cost is just way too steep. Okay, I don't know what the price is. My feeling is like probably like $50 to switch from one formation to another is probably reasonable, because the person still got those special inscriptions, right? Whether it's through Autark, whether it's through the pity system, whether it's through getting lucky, it still is very, very hard to get a special inscription that's not in a scroll spot. Switching over, you know, should cost some money, but not too much, right? So like something like $50 a pop, or $200 to switch completely from one formation to another. It's still expensive, but it's not almost $800. And then two, I think they're going to make it cheaper, however they do it, right? Whether you get more stones or it's cheaper to switch over specials. But I think being able to switch 2 special inscriptions over from one formation type to another from the achievements in the KVK is pretty reasonable, right? So if you want to switch without paying at all, you could do it over 2 KVKs. If you want to win a KVK and then spend like $100 to switch the other 2, right? That's something where, I mean, I think it would still kind of accept people, but it wouldn't put the cost at such a place where it completely turns people off. But right now, the way it is, right? 4 KVKs or $780 to be able to switch 4 special inscriptions is just way too expensive in my opinion. So even if Pincer is better, I would not switch, right? Not because I don't want the best, just because I have a strong feeling that as they release formations like this, you know, just arbitrarily introduce a new formation in the game that people don't have a chance to prepare for, right? And then they want to, you know, use the best. There should be cheaper methods to switch over, and I think Lilith is going to implement that, right? So overall, big takeaway for this, I wouldn't be too worried yet. You know, we want to see what the special is. If it's anything like the Delta specials, honestly, Arch might still be the way to go for Smite open field, and then I just don't see it being way too OP just for game balance. But then even if it is like a little OP, and that's just the way to go, right? I actually still would wait, just because right now, say for example, for my arch, right, I have 3 specials, right? So if I switch over and I want to do it, right, I could do 1 KVK where I get 10 stones, and then I could pay essentially $380 to switch the other 2 over, right, and then a little bit more for the double, and then I could go to Pincer. That's just like, that's pretty ridiculous to me, right? And I think it's fair for a lot of people to be upset if that's actually the cost. And so I'm betting or guessing that Lilith is going to actually dramatically bring down the cost of converting from one formation type to another, just because it still takes, you know, a lot of money and pulls to actually get the specials, right? Switching from one formation to the other shouldn't be that steep of a penalty. All right, so that's kind of my initial thoughts on the Pincer. We'll see what happens when the formations are released, but I don't know. I think it's time for them to also look at balancing out some of the formations more, right? Because there's just some formations here, like Tetsudo, that no one's using, or Hollow Square, right? If no one's using them, at least kind of get rid of them, so you're not just putting all this garbage in there. And just make more like relevant formations. I think there is probably going to be another round of cleanup come around at some point, but that's my thoughts on the Pincer formation. If you watched all the way to the end, you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you next time.